Your guide to the truth. TheNewAmericanMedia.com.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way Galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles. To be specific, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Agree to Disagree here on the TNAM Radio Network here at thenewamericanmedia.com. My name's Brian Engelman, and I've been your host, as I have been for the past 5 years. Lord almighty, half a decade doing this. Yeah, we have a few unofficial birthdays over here at thenewamericanmedia.com. Wow, I had that music up loud. I wonder how that sounded for y'all out there. That was called The Fall by Elevated Tracks. Elevated Tracks is the pseudonym for my brother, Chris Engelman. I don't know if he has all that stuff listed online, but we play so much of his music here. Anyway, but yeah, we have a few unofficial birthdays. May Day is, I think, the day that we started our website. You know, and then it just, they all happened right around May Day. So we just kind of celebrate on May Day. And that's just 2 days away. So good times. Happy birthday. Apparently, according to like Hallmark and some of those places, when you have your anniversary gift, first anniversary, 5th anniversary is wood. So if you want to send us some some wood, we'll take it. But anyhow, today we're going to talk about the Libertarian Party. It's something we've been covering. You can check out our previous videos. We've talked with Austin Peterson. Dean Ryan and I went and spoke with him over at Judd Weiss's place. Judd is running for vice president in the Libertarian Party. Austin Peterson running for president. It was a fundraiser for John McAfee. We spoke with Mr. McAfee as well. So check all that stuff out. It's all at thenewamericanmedia.com on YouTube, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Click subscribe. And check out some of the shows that we've done. Our guest today, Ford Fischer, he's done several shows with us in the past. So go ahead and check out our archive. And if you let those little advertisements play, it's kind of like throwing a couple pennies in the wishing well for us. So please let those play and leave your comments. Your comments are very valuable as well, because we like to continue the conversations. Listen to the show, and you know, in real time, you just throw down some comments, things that you agree with, things you disagree with. That's the name of the show, Agree to Disagree. You know, we don't have to hate each other just because we don't agree with everybody on every single point. Nobody's going to do that. So get over that real quick, and your life is going to be a little easier. So that's kind of what we're trying to encourage here, is a thoughtful conversation. But we want you to link up with us every way possible. Like I said, the homepage is The New American Media. On the right-hand side is TNAM Radio. That's where you click play to listen to this show live. We also do a sports show. It's called The Unhappy Hour. I'm a Cleveland Indians, Cavaliers, and Browns fan, also Ohio State Buckeye fan. So we'll talk about a lot of those teams, but we also cover the national stories. Of course, the NFL draft is occurring, and we're going to do a show with former NBA scout Zach Barris, current NBA consultant, kind of covering some of that, and maybe the Cavs' next second-round matchup with the Atlanta Hawks. So we have a ton of different things. Check out the content, but anyway, thenewamericanmedia.com. Underneath TNAM Radio is our Facebook feed. You can link up with us right off of that, and then underneath that, it's our Twitter feed. We're at American_media_. By the way, Instagram. If you're not linked up with The New American Media, just search The New American Media. If you're not linked up with our Instagram, you're missing out. We got some great memes. I'm telling you, this is the first election season where it's been the meme generation. You know, this really is a meme election, and I like it. So, anyway, link up with us. It's going to be a heck of a ride. I think we might have, we're going to have campaign coverage at the RNC and the DNC, and we want to talk about the LNC, something you haven't thought about maybe. The Libertarian Party, the National Libertarian Party Chairman. Our other guest today, Charles Peralo, he's going to be joining us to talk about why he wants to run the Libertarian Party, why he would like to be the chairman. So, to start off, let's get Ford Fischer into the show. We'll do this one at a time. I know, if we produced it, we could have done this in the background, but I'm the producer, the engineer, the host, the researcher, the editor. Good times.
Hello.
Hello, Ford. You are live on the air. How you doing, sir?
I am doing quite well.
It's funny, Ford and I were talking off air to kind of get an idea of how we wanted to program the show. See, I can see you, but you can't see me.
Okay. I can turn that off, actually.
No, it's fun. I want to look at Paris. I think you got an Eiffel Tower over there. And
I'm in my girlfriend's room. To those who don't know, he's referring to the fact that he can see me on Skype.
Yes. And, you know, one of these days, I think we're going to make that upgrade, turn this more into like a Joe Rogan-style podcast where it's video and audio. You know, I mean, everything's...
Love to do it that way.
Yeah, it's all shifting that way anyway. We'll eventually do that. But anyway, Ford, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure having you back on. I don't know, should we get Charles into the show first, and then we'll get into, because we got to get an update with you and your Baltimore thing, and we always got to keep that going.
Yeah,
but
let's get Charles in, but then we can do a quick update.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let me go ahead and give him a ring here. This is neat because he's not even in my contacts yet. I'll sort that out afterward, but we'll get him in. See how this one works. Today's show is the brainchild of Ford Fischer, by the way. We did forge an alliance and say we're going to do regular programs, so good work. Kudos.
Hello, Brian.
Hello, Charles. This is Brian, and you are live on the Agree to Disagree radio program with myself and Ford Fischer. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Agree to Disagree, nice title for a show right there. But you know what? In the libertarian community, there's not a lot of people who like to take the motto "agree to disagree," and I enjoy them about that.
Well, thank you for the kind words on the title, because you know when you talk about these important issues, you're never going to agree with everybody on everything. So you know we could spend all of our time about the 15% of things that we're just not going to see eye to eye on, or we can get some work done. And if you can get some work done on things that you agree on, whether that's 30%, 60%, it doesn't matter. If there's one thing that you can do that you're both on the same page with, start with that. Who knows? Maybe over time you'll evolve and all the rest will work its way out. But, you know, in these presidential campaigns, Charles, you see it especially in the Republican side. The Democratic side has been a weird...
Well, the thing is, it's very simple with the Democrats. They don't really care about issues that much as long as they care about big promises. They don't really care about what gets you there. With the Republicans... I mean, I will give them a little bit of a compliment. They seem a little bit more issue-oriented, not much more. But with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, it's sort of the race of like, oh, we're going to pay for these people's colleges. It's like, oh, we're going to pay for their college and their room and board. It's kind of a one-up thing there. But what you said about agreeing to disagree and trying to unite on issues, with the Libertarian Party, I mean, I've been running for chairman right now. Trying to grow that base. I think the party has a lot of problems that need to be fixed, and I'm trying to do an outsider business, sort of an inventor approach to it. But what you said is definitely right, because I look at it and say, with Republicans, for the most part, we do agree with people like the Tea Party and even Ted Cruz on issues such as economics, and on Bernie Sanders supporters, I think 2/3 of the time, foreign policy and social policy, we agree with them. So yeah, definitely let's make some movements there. Let's try and progress things. And if you look at the Libertarian Party, you know, I see a lot of people and a lot of debates over the stupidest of issues that are kind of setting the party back a bit. And, I mean, people agree 99.9% of the time, but that 0.1%, it caused a lot of issues, so I definitely am with you there.
Yeah, those are the types of things that make the headlines, Charles. But, hey, before we get too far afield here, I want to bring in Ford Fischer. We kind of started the show with him. We got you with your introduction, and now I would like to make sure that you two are connected. Ford, say hello to Charles.
Hi, Charles. I'm glad that I was able to get this together, and I would give a little shout-out to your campaign manager for getting this together, Mike Mazzarone, or Mazzarone?
And Mazzarone, that's good enough.
Mazzarone, yeah. I was glad to see him contact me, and I'm happy to be speaking to you here, because I think this is an interesting topic.
We're both from the East Coast, so Italian names are kind of easier to pronounce for us.
Ah, gotcha, okay.
Forget about it. Forget about it.
Oh, yeah, no, I couldn't do that accent to save my life. But okay, but thank you for having me, and that's Ford. Good to be on as well. Thanks for setting this up as well.
No, absolutely. Ford, let me kind of bounce it over to you. Ford and I have a little bit of housekeeping, Charles, that we like to do because he's a regular guest on the program, and there's this running issue. Actually, you were literally running down the streets with the police in Baltimore, so I guess it is literally and figuratively a running issue. But about a year ago, you had a run-in during the Baltimore riots, and actually, I'll just shut up. Can you recap us with what happened and where we are?
Update, and then we can be talking to Charles. But so on May 2nd of last year, so literally like 4 days from now, a year ago, during the Baltimore riots, I was filming a police chase. I was doing coverage on the ground of the riots there, and at the conclusion of that foot chase, which involved National Guard, BPD, an MRAP, and like a search helicopter. So this was a big chase that went on for about 5 blocks, and when it concluded, the cops turned around and then one of them kind of got out of control and then arrested me. The thing that I've been talking about on this show is basically my experience with the courts and everything like that since then, and in particular, sort of how dealing with that legally. And what I found is that that's an extremely long process, and on the advice of counsel, I haven't talked about plans for litigation or anything like that until it's actually filed. So I've always been hinting at a lawsuit. Now, as of this week, I have actually filed the lawsuit. So it's literally a year later. That's how long it takes to get this stuff done.
Congratulations.
I'm finding just how broken the legal system is. And for someone like me, I can do something like that, and it's not, my life doesn't depend on that. But for somebody who is in Baltimore or anywhere else and runs into some kind of a legal trouble, and their well-being depends on their ability to deal with the courts and stuff, a really broken legal system could be life or death. It could make such a huge difference. And so I'll continue to update you now as that actually goes on. I would love to see either a settlement or actually it goes to court and I win, or whatever. My colleague Trey Yingst has been through this before. He was arrested in Ferguson, and it took about 6 months for him to get to a settlement where he won $8,500 and a full record expungement. But again, it's people who have the resources to fight back, and so I think criminal justice, so circling into the topic here, I think criminal justice is something that the libertarians, the conservatives, and the liberals kind of all have some common ground to work on with it.
Well, first off, I would just like to make the point that, in 40 years, maybe you can run for president just like Bernie Sanders and show your arrest photo at a rally and get a bunch of fan base off of that.
Nice.
But, definitely, I think the Libertarian Party has been pretty vocal over the years with regards to criminal justice reform. One person who I think really needs to be commended is Rand Paul, because I think he was the first major politician to bring this issue up. I think the Libertarian Party could be a little bit more in sync with the Black Lives Matter group. I don't agree with everything they stand for, and I know the LP certainly doesn't as well, but I think we kind of pushed against them when there was more to work with there. So I think that was a little bit of a mistake on our part.
Well, and so this is sort of the heart of what I'm always interested in. And if you saw the libertarian debate on Fox Business, hosted by John Stossel, I asked a question on there of all of the candidates, which was essentially, how would you capture disenfranchised Democrat voters? A lot of libertarians are former Republicans, recovering Republicans, if you will, disenfranchised Republicans. How do you capture the Democrats? And Gary Johnson said something that was very similarly rhetorically to what you brought up, which is that he's, 2/3 of the way in line with Sanders on basically social issues and some foreign policy stuff. McAfee and Peterson kind of pushed that aside. They kind of poo-pooed social liberalism as being at odds with religious liberty and things like that. I actually spoke with you in a comment thread on Augustus Invictus's sort of endorsement of you, and you sort of seem to have the same idea.
By the way, I didn't really know much about Augustus. There's kind of a couple of I've gotten to know him better. There were some kind of strange things on the internet about him, but I was very happy to see he was interested in my campaign.
Hey,
what I was talking about.
You know what? You want to talk about interesting things when you do some more research? How about having a conversation with John McAfee? You want to hear about a very interesting backstory?
I had a 2-hour Google Hangout session discussion for BeALibertarian.com with him.
Nice.
2 days after he announced his campaign for the LP spot. So he definitely has some interesting factors. But I like John a lot, and I think he has grown the LP. But regarding the Bernie Democrats and trying to appeal to him, one thing that I'm trying to make a centerpiece of this campaign for chairman is, and this is something that some libertarians in the party, people who've been here for over 25 years, are giving me a lot of fight on. I want to establish a Republican and a Democrat sort of affiliate status. So basically, you can be a Libertarian Party affiliate, but still in the DNC and the GOP. Now, what does that give you? First off, it gives you information. It puts you in contact with us. It gives you a say on what we're doing. And also, ideally, it gives you a note saying, please donate to us. But doing that, I think that not only could we better organize with the GOP and the DNC, but we could also just grow the party and eventually get more real members. Now, I think the reason why John McAfee and Austin Peterson do not people is you are correct. On social issues, sometimes they kind of take it the opposite way. Not always. It seems like with the Bernie people, while some of them are socially a little too liberal, it seems like most of them do get freedom. And even if they're not perfectly in sync, they're pretty much there. But when it comes to how to just get those people, I'll say this, they're not getting into the Libertarian Party unless we're handing them economics books on the way in. So we have to teach them a couple of things, maybe learn a couple things from them, because Bernie raised $150 million this election. I'm kind of interested in how he did that, and I think the entire Libertarian Party should keep ears open for that. So I think there's something to learn from them, and maybe we can teach them how to do math. That would be kind of nice.
Well, I'm sorry. I just want to jump in with one quick thing there. How to bring people to the party, kind of piggybacking off of where you two were both going with that. Ford, I think you announced yourself, or introduced yourself rather, as a recovering Republican. And that's a phrase I use all the damn time. I used to go, 70% of what they say, that's pretty right on, man. I'm with them. And then you see the other 30%, you go, whoa, that's not worth my vote. But something I've been wondering about how to get people to join the party. How many times do you hear it? Oh, you're throwing your vote away. Well, if you don't vote for this person, that's a vote for the other person. I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of team up with recovering Republicans and disenfranchised Democrats and just hold hands and say, hey, you be my buddy on this field trip. Like if you go to a field trip in the second grade or something, and you have to have a buddy and you can't let him out of your sight at any time, so it's more accountability. To find a former Democrat, a former Republican, and say, hey, can we both cancel out our votes together? And so that's not a vote for Trump and it's not a vote for Hillary, but we're going to go over here, and if we can get enough of these little teams, look, we're not voting for Trump or Hillary, we're saying anything else. Just give me anything else with maximum liberty attached. I really feel like there's some sort of program, some sort of idea within that thought. I don't know exactly how it's executed, but for me, I've always had that as a vision. I was curious to your thoughts, Charles, and Ford, of course.
Well, one thing I've mentioned a little bit on, I've not touched a huge deal of base on, is alternative voting. Now, alternative voting is the process where you can put in your first choice candidates. So let's just go back to 2012. For a lot of people, it could have been Gary Johnson on the ballot. Then their second choice probably would have been, in some cases, if they're a recovering Republican, it could have been Mitt Romney. And some it could have been Barack Obama. So you put in your first choice, but then you have a second choice. So if Gary Johnson only were to get 5%, which would be very nice, hoping he can do a little bit better than that this time, but let's see. But if he got 5% and he was eliminated, those voters, the second choice vote, so if it's Romney or Barack Obama, would go to them. And I think that if you look at that model, they've done a little bit of it in South Africa, and they've had some success there. Now, I'm not saying the Libertarian Party should make that in their platform, and I'm not even fully endorsing it yet because it needs more research. But what I think we should do is we should go to the Constitution Party, and we should form a 501c3 focused on research in this. We bring in the Mark Cubans, we bring in the Ben Cohens, we get people from both the right and the left who are independents, and we start researching this idea and then eventually lobby for it so it's experimented on the state and local level, and maybe it goes national. If that model were to work and it were a success and there weren't too much confusion or special rules, then we would no longer waste votes. People would vote based on who they want to get in, and they wouldn't have to be worried about that. And that would open the door for the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and the Constitution Party to say, hey, you're not wasting your vote anymore. Just put us as the first and put your second as the second. Now, there are a lot of faults with that, but I think that's a good idea there. So that's something I'd be interested in doing as chairman. But as for actually getting people to say that their votes are not wasted, I would just say look at Hillary Clinton and look at Donald Trump. If you vote for them, it is a wasted vote. So there you go.
Yeah, that is one way to look at it. I just got to make that comment, though. That was a pretty nuanced and pragmatic answer, almost thoughtful, if I would dare be so bold as to say it wasn't a market-researched claptrap from Hillary, and it wasn't just flying off the cuff, brash bravado from like twirling your arms around like the Tasmanian devil that you'll see from Trump from time to time. And I think that the country tends to look at the Libertarian Party as just a bunch of crazy potheads, and they want to be anarchists, and just dissolve government in general. And I've been spending time with Adam Kokesh, and he goes that.
I've gone to multiple state parties. I've dealt with many libertarians for many years. You know what? I could say that's a decent portion of our movement, but those people are all welcome. And also, I'll say this: I'm a teetotaler. I've never had a drink of alcohol in my life, never smoked pot, and I'm not an anarcho-capitalist, so I don't reflect that.
Wow, check that out. Ford, let me get back to you. I did that a little kumbaya thing. I threw it down the hallway to see if the smoke grenade would go off. What happened on your end of the hallway?
Well, so the idea of a first and second choice, and actually really any of these proposals that end up helping third parties, because I'm always fascinated in alternative politics and hybrid politics. I love organizations like the Libertarian Party itself, but also like log cabin Republicans, which is like Republicans that believe in LGBT rights. Basically any of the any kind of hybrid political philosophy or other alternative political philosophy. However, the Republican and the Democrat parties essentially have a collusion, right? They don't want anybody else in.
It's their racket. It's their racket.
Right. They don't want a Constitution Party candidate being popular. They don't want the Libertarian Party.
No, it's the
popular.
Bloods and the Crips. They don't bring in the 18th Street. Like, we got Bloods over here, Crips over here.
Hillary is probably more in line with Jill Stein from the Green Party philosophically than with Donald Trump, but she would never want Jill Stein to take from her support, in lieu of Trump. She would rather Trump win probably than Stein because of the sort of two-party duopoly. So my question is, on a proposal like that, or any proposal that would really benefit the Libertarian Party or make it more legitimate or mainstream, how do you go against the fact that all of the systems in place right now are set to defend the two parties that are mainstream? How do you fight them when they have the actual power and they want to protect themselves?
To Charles.
You kind of broke up there.
Charles, yeah.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we gotcha. All right, you're saying that it broke up a little bit there? You missed that question, Charles?
Did you miss the question?
I wasn't able to hear that. Ford, you kind of broke up there.
Okay.
It's in Hollywood, and if I look out the studio window, I can see the Hollywood sign here. It's called the elevator pitch. Ford, sum up what you just did in a couple minutes in a sentence or two.
Sure. The elevator pitch. Basically, the system in place right now is meant to defend the Republican and Democrat parties from the third parties, from Constitution, Greens, Libertarians. How do you actually get your proposals that would really help the Libertarians to actually go through, given that you have to propose that to people who mostly want to defend the Republican and Democrat parties?
I'm sorry, this is breaking up quite a bit. You're asking me regarding...
Hang on, let's do this.
I'm sorry, the total breakup there.
Okay, Charles, how about this? What I tend to do when this happens, I'm going to hang up, I'm going to call you right back. We're just going to kind of reset the feed. Okay, so we'll give him a second to regroup. That's the beauty. Funny, Ford and I were talking off the air, doing some pre-production for the show and saying how unreliable Skype is, and then my other call kind of gave me some problems. So we'll bring this back in. Start this again with Charles. See if this works any better. We could always blame him and his phone. That's easier.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. We were just kind of wondering, should I start just... We can blame you. That's your phone. That's your lousy reception, not us.
Well, actually, there's a lot of rain right now in New York, so that could be my fault.
Oh, wow.
But please try and restate the question. I hope this works out better.
Yeah. One more time, Mr. Fischer.
Okay, so here's the quick version of that question. So you proposed an idea that would help the Libertarian Party, and there are other proposals like that, like including libertarians in the general election debates, all these kinds of things. My question is, right now the system is set up to defend the Democrat and Republican parties because they're the ones in power, and they don't want third parties like the Constitution Party, the Libertarians, the Greens, to get in. How do you actually get those policies in place, given that essentially the decision makers support the two-party duopoly that's already in place?
Okay, very good question. I got it that time. Overall, you are correct. There is a massive play in trying to stop third parties from entering into this whole process. The thing is, though, that at the end of the day, there is a strong independent registration in the current political system. Independents are the largest voting bloc. Now, most independents are just Republicans and Democrats who probably couldn't even figure out how to register, but I mean, that's sadly a reality there. But that said, over 50% of people, maybe even 70% of people, they do want a third party, and that is something they've requested. So actually trying to go against the Republicans and Democrats is difficult. That's why when I say alternative voting as the first method, I would say go on the local level, because if you look at Rhode Island, you look at Alaska, you look at Kansas, you even look at New York State to some extent, there is a strong backbone of third parties who have consistently been able to break 5 to 10% in those states and those regions. So really I would look at it, say, and also there are, if you look at Louisiana, California, there are states with very different voting methods, which do in some cases help third parties out a little bit, such as jungle primaries or whatever. So I look at it and say that the local method is the best way to confront the big parties. It's not going to happen on the national level. It's not going to happen with Hillary Clinton in there, but it could happen in states and local governments, and I think that's just the best way to approach it.
And so bringing up local stuff, so sort of like the Tea Party movement was very reliant on grassroots and local stuff. Would you like to see more of a rise of libertarians running for mayor or state senator and things like that? Or do you think that it's the big positions, the country's senators and obviously the president that get the message out most?
Well, I mean, regarding actually getting the message out on a national scale, I think that to do political reforms, to some extent, I think Bernie Sanders might be a great person to talk to on this. He was an independent for the majority of his career. In fact, he was an independent until just over a year ago. So I think that you have to reach out to those types of people and say, this is what a third party can do, this is what independents can do, and this is why it's beneficial.
Wait, I thought Bernie was actually registered as a socialist. Well, how did that...
No. So he calls himself a democratic socialist, but he's always been an independent senator, and now he is just a Democrat who happens to call himself a democratic socialist, much like Rand Paul calls himself a libertarian Republican.
Well, Bernie's registration, what happened was Bernie co-founded a political party in Vermont called the Vermont Socialists. For some reason, Bernie never really wanted to deal with the Green Party. Not 100% sure why. There might have been some history there. Then he was originally a socialist mayor, but he was elected to Congress as an independent and kept that way up until, forgive me, I have a cold, up until he joined the DNC recently.
Bless you. No. So I guess we all had components of the truth in there, and right. Once again, it's sometimes things are seldom black and white; they're often shades of gray. But over the course of this whole process, and I'm a political junkie. I wouldn't have been running the New American Media for half a decade if I didn't care about this type of stuff. But I was saying earlier in the program, Charles, that we've learned about 1237. We know that's the magic number you need to get to become the nominee for the RNC. We've learned about superdelegates and how in so many instances a state can be won by a Bernie Sanders character and the delegates all go to somebody that didn't win the state. And it's such a ridiculous, confusing process that's really, I mean, come on, it's intentionally designed to keep non-full-time players out of the arena. You know, and I'm not really a big fan of that because they're really just rigging the system. But
well, my counter to that would be that, I mean, you are correct. The parties do try and box people out. But as sad as I hate to say it, I really hate to say this name, but Donald Trump proved that you could break through that. At the end of the day, the parties were 100% opposed to Donald Trump, but he will very likely be the Republican nominee, which is very sad because I thought he was the worst possible Republican to pick. But, you know, he did break the big party mold for whatever reason, and I think that is just enough proof. Also, Bernie Sanders, you know, if Bernie Sanders was a decade younger and maybe could talk a little less in that Brooklyn voice, I bet you he would have defeated Clinton.
Hey, people said the same about Ron Paul. If he were a decade or two younger and he didn't have as much of a Texas drawl, you know, he might have connected, or you know, he was born in a wrong era.
Like the guy you unmasked at the end of the Scooby-Doo episode.
Nice.
Well, I'm going to say this. When I was like 15 years old, I waited outside of Ron Paul's office for 4.5 hours. I ended up having a 1-hour talk with Jesse Ventura for no apparent reason, who was also waiting outside there. I loved Ron Paul. I think Ron Paul was probably the greatest figure in the liberty movement in the last 50 years, maybe more. But I'm just going to say this. You know, whenever I see that face, I'm like, it's Old Man Jenkins.
It's Old Man Jenkins. No, Ford, what were you thinking?
Well, okay, so I wanted to talk about the actual individual candidates because it's interesting. You bring up Ron Paul, who obviously was very popular in 2012, and so much, I mean, of the current libertarian movement, you know, was involved in the Ron Paul campaign, and many of those have sort of split into various movements. Brian earlier brought up Adam Kokesh, who supported Ron Paul, but now he's basically an anarcho-capitalist. And then you have other Ron Paul people who are now Rand Paul people, and you have the Ron Paul people who, for some ungodly reason, are now supporting Trump just because they like tearing things down. So, however, I saw looking at I'm actually on your LinkedIn, and I see that you actually volunteered for Gary Johnson in 2012, and so in 2012 he got.
I actually in 2012 for the Republican primary, I chose Gary Johnson over Ron Paul. Now, I did vote for Ron Paul because Gary did drop out of the Republican primary at that point. But the reason I chose Gary in 2011, I was probably his first volunteer. I volunteered for him at the CPAC convention. Now, the reason I supported Gary was, I would say 2 points. One, I thought Gary was better on immigration. I'm a very big advocate of open borders, so I did like that Gary was more on that way. The second one was that I thought Gary was more electable, which, I mean, obviously he did not do as well in the Republican primary as Ron Paul. In fact, he didn't come anywhere close. But I thought that having a 2-term governor in his mid-50s who's a businessman kind of appeals to moderates. I thought that was something we could run with. And I still, to some extent, stand with that. I think that if Gary Johnson did get some more of a shot from the libertarian community in 2012, he would have done a bit better. I think he could have taken it farther than Ron Paul. And I'd say the biggest reason for that is age. I just think a 77-year-old president, while Ron Paul is great, it wasn't practical to a lot of voters.
Right.
Yeah, there is that component for sure. Go ahead, Ford.
Well, so ultimately, then he did run as a libertarian, and he got just shy of 1%. And I think this is a big year where libertarians can make a huge dent. Because honestly, people just really don't like Trump, and they really don't like Clinton. Johnson is polling in one poll that he cites all the time now. He actually polled at 11% when he was included in a head-to-head poll with those two. How do you get the party itself to push their nominee higher than they did in 2012? What can you do now that will make you not just get 1%, particularly if it's the same candidate? How do you get Gary Johnson to get 10 times
the support? In 2012, I think 1%, while it was very good, it was not as good considering the fact that the opponents were Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. I mean, I think that you have to choose Republicans, and we should have done more in the 5% range, or we should have at least broken 3%. The thing is, I don't blame Gary Johnson for that. I blame the Libertarian Party for that, because at the end of the day, we have no infrastructure online. We have no infrastructure on the local level. When Ralph Nader ran in 2000, he had rallies where he can get 5,000 people. We don't have any of that. So what I think I need to do as the chairman, and sadly I don't think much of this can happen in the right after Orlando, because I would just take over. But what I would do on 3 fronts. The first front I already mentioned, which is set up a Libertarian Party affiliate status. This way we can get the Republicans and the Democrats and show them in November we still matter. The next thing is social media. From beinglibertarian.com, I've got a lot of lessons in social media and how to work it in politics. I think we need to form 6 to 12 pages online where there's single-issue pages that appeal to Republicans or Democrats, and we own them, and then we market them. So basically, we grow them to be 500,000 likes, which is practical to do. It really is. And we grow them. We get different kinds of people liking these pages, and then we market our candidates during the 3 to 6 month election cycle. The core ends to that. That's one idea there. And the next thing is we need to set up an LP app, a national app that connects libertarians across the country, sets up local chapters, sets up events, allows them to self-organize, monitors, things like that. Now, as for Gary Johnson, though, and by the way, there's a chance it could be Austin Peterson. There's a chance it could be John McAfee. There's a chance it could be Darryl Perry. But regarding whoever the nominee is, I would say one big factor we need this time around is media, and I think the media is going to come from high-profile endorsements. So I've heard that Vince Vaughn is planning to endorse Gary. That's very exciting. Penn Jillette and Teller, they have been huge Gary fans. That's a huge benefit right there. I've heard a couple of rumors that Caitlyn Jenner is being approached as an endorsement, which I would welcome that idea if she were to post on Facebook. That would be a lot of votes right there. So I think that short term, because we don't have infrastructure set up right now, the infrastructure I'm looking to set up for whatever candidate, I would recommend the full focus as possible, or go and steal Tim Draper, find him there who's going to put in $5 million, and that gets the campaign to new heights.
Well, right. I want to kind of veer this into the direction of trying to figure out how the process works. I started that question, kind of took a side path, and now I kind of looped back around to it. 1237 to get the RNC. You got to get through the super delegates that the Democrats leave in your way. How does the libertarian side of things work with this process? We all become quasi-experts every 4 years, and then we put it back on the shelf, and then it collects dust, and we put it further back on the shelf, and we're like, no, I do know a lot of this, unless it's our life that we eat, breathe, and sleep this. What can you tell us about the process of the Libertarian Party, Charles?
Oh, okay, sure. So for the Libertarian Party, the process, it's a little bit confusing. It's very old school because, look, we can't afford and we don't have enough members to do a 50-state primary run where people go out to vote. It does make things kind of hard. So you go to the party, you get elected a delegate, and simple as that, you become a delegate. And there are a few states where they do have straw polls, and the straw poll winner is entitled some delegates. That doesn't hold firm that much, especially because normally these things go into contested conventions. In fact, I believe with Gary Johnson, it was the first time in 20 years where he won where the Libertarian nominee was chosen on the first ballot. So, I mean, it's a simple process. I think it does need some improvements. The problem, I would be very interested in exploring how we could use the internet to improve that process. Buddy Roemer was involved in 2012 with the America First Party. That kind of collapsed because they didn't have a clear platform to run on. But they were trying to use the internet to elect people and to get them in nomination circles. I think we should explore that a little bit more. But currently the process, it's an old process. It really is a pre-1970s primary process. It's the kind of process that had Warren Harding made the nominee in 1920. So it's old school. All
right, so it's old school. What day did you wake up and say, I want to run this whole thing? Like, what's the story behind how that happens? Like, I don't know how one day I'd just be like, I want to oversee the RNC or the Democratic Party and become
the Libertarian Party in my case.
Yeah, so or the Libertarian Party in your case. How did that happen?
I'd say I've been involved in the Liberty movement for about 8 years now. I was involved with the C-STEM Institute, which had a larger budget than the Libertarian Party did. I was involved in the Bitcoin Center in Manhattan, which we were 100 feet from the New York Stock Exchange. I also was the co-founder of BeInLibertarian.com, where I got to speak to pretty much every presidential candidate. I got to organize some stuff, and I also moderated the Philadelphia Libertarian Party debate. So I was looking at the Libertarian Party really saying, you know what, the GOP is beyond repair at this point. I was at Donald Trump's presidential campaign announcement. In fact, if you were to go on my Facebook, there's a photo of me faking a heart attack, giving the finger from the bar at the Trump, right as Donald's announcing. So I was not a friend to how that party was going. And I was looking at it, and I said, the Libertarian Party really isn't the Libertarian Party at this point. There's Cato, there's Mises, there's Students for Liberty, there's Young Americans for Liberty, there's the Ayn Rand Institute. These are organizations that are much bigger than us, have many more donors, they're far more organized, and they pretend the Libertarian Party doesn't even exist. And that's because of a lot of mixed management we've had, and it's also because of that stigma, we are potheads who want anarchy. So I said, I don't think the current chairman or anybody running for chair has the ability to fix it. I look at it and say, I have a more technical background than any of them. I've worked with organizations or companies with bigger budgets. So I didn't think it was a ridiculous idea to run, and I decided to get involved in that. And I put out some ideas, and so far from speaking to, I would say about 20 state chairs, and at this point over 100 delegates at the convention, I've gotten a lot of positive reactions. One state chair flat out said to me, you're the only one who seems to have proposed an actual idea to grow the party so far, compared to everyone else who is more of just like, what we're doing is okay.
Hold on, Charles. Have you turned that quote into a meme for your candidacy to run the Libertarian Party? That should be a meme. That quote.
What quote?
The one, you're the only one that has an actual idea to grow the party. That's a good meme in the social media age. I like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I am the old one. I mean, the thing is, like, I speak to these people, and some members of the Libertarian Party flat out think what they are doing is good. They look at, and I hear people tell me, because I joined the Libertarian Party recently, and I look at it and people say, I've been in this party for 25 years. I'm like, well, what did you achieve? 0. And 25 times 0 is 0. So I don't see the big deal here. If you were to go to BeALibertarian.com, on Facebook, we have a better social media following than the Libertarian Party. Week after week, we beat them out. So I look at it saying, I've beaten you guys on the social media front, and on the budget front, I think I've done pretty well. And when I was involved with the C-STEM Institute, I don't want to take credit for bringing in donors. Also, we were a 501c3, which is much easier to raise funds for. But, the 18 months I was there, we raised about $2.3 million. That's more money than the Libertarian Party budgets. So that's sort of my attitude there. And I'm running a positive campaign. I don't want to bash Nick Sarwark because, with a movement as small as ours, we can't afford infighting, and we already have tons of it. So I would try to avoid that.
And just to make it easy, it's like you can run, they have the NFL draft right now. My Cleveland Browns have been stuck in just a horrible, bad dream for about 15 years. But while you wouldn't want to get into a boxing match with people in the Libertarian Party, there's no harm in standing at the same starting line and running 50-yard dash, 100-meter dash or something, and you're, down the end of the field. You don't hurt the other person by running, but you say, look, I think I'm the superior athlete. You should draft me, just like they're saying in the NFL. Please draft me onto your team so I can have a career. I'm good at what I do. That's all you're saying. And I don't think that needs to be interpreted in some sort of way where everybody gets hurt over, spilled milk and my feelings, and I felt insulted, and it's like, that's great, guys. I get it. And that's where I kind of come from, Charles, is I've tried to stay out of all of the little micro fights in the libertarian / new media world. We've had countless presidential candidates and people that have been people in media, people that have a reach that spans the globe and it circles it multiple times. You know, and from time to time, these people have their bad days, and it's like, no, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than any of these arguments between people that used to. I don't care. It's more important than to get worried over these little things.
And I just want to point out, if you ask the Libertarian Party members who are having these arguments, why are they having arguments? It's not because of issues. It's not because of things people care about. At the end of the day, they have arguments because they wanted this little position in the party that had no real power, but they just want to say they had the position, and they got into a fight because someone didn't support them or someone just told them that we don't believe in them. And that's the big problem. In fact, I was reaching out to one of the presidential candidates to ask for their support on this, and this is not one of the main three candidates. But, you know, I like the guy personally. He was at the debate I moderated, and he said the reason he wouldn't support me is because a year ago, I sent him a message asking him not to run for the LP presidential spot and instead run for U.S. Senate, saying that his talents could be better used there and he won't benefit the presidential race. And those are the kind of actions which piss these people off when you just reinstate reality to them. Now, look, I've been in business for 6 years. I have had phone calls where we are cursing each other out for an entire hour, and then we make up and be friends 15 minutes later. The Libertarian Party is too emotional, and we need to get over that.
That's a good point. So, you know, I've served on several different boards of directors, and you know, it's there's people that are trying to do things for the greater good, but then there are titles within those, and then there are different power ranks between being a treasurer and being a president and being a secretary and being a member at large, and it is a reality. But exactly, you know, it's bigger than any of these little things. But yeah, you're so right to point that out, that these barriers to our communication, when the pride and the ego get involved, and it's like, then it becomes, it's my way or the highway. You know, it's tricky. It's tough to walk that balance beam without being pulled in one direction or another. Ford, you were getting ready to say something?
Yeah. So I've got some feedback coming from your computer or something. Okay, it just went away. Along those lines, you had an article 2 weeks ago, and this is sort of a critical question here, so you're on the spot. You said at the beginning of an article something that goes well with what you've just said, which is united we stand, divided we fall. And this is your article about Peterson sounding the false alarms on the other two campaigns. Basically, he said something. This is Austin Peterson said something very critical of the other two campaigns, basically accusing Johnson's of trying to screw over his delegates, and of McAfee's basically saying that it's no longer working. And in it, by the way, this is an article written by you, and it clarifies at the bottom that it is your opinion specifically, not Being Libertarian's opinion.
Yeah, no, at beinglibertarian.com, all articles are opinion-based. We don't really state that much there, but go on.
So my question for you, though, is, so you're very critical of him objectively with screenshots, but you have some language in here like Austin just visibly lied and should probably be ashamed. And another moment you say, here Austin is growing a tinfoil hat by saying this grand Gary Johnson conspiracy, but ... and in the final paragraph, all in all, Austin is spreading rumors like he's in middle school. So can you talk about uniting the party while at the same time you kind of using that kind of language with the delegate? And I want to make the comparison. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is often criticized as the DNC chair because she's seen as being kind of in collusion with Hillary or
anti-Hillary. Okay, so a couple points on that. Number one, I actually wrote an article in early January for The Libertarian, which I said why I don't support Austin. Now, this was before I decided I was going to run for the LP chair spot. And, I mean, when it came to Austin Peterson's run, the reason for it was my bashing is because I think he has come out a little too negative. Now, that said, I want to work with Austin. I think he's built a great audience and he's built a great base. And, you know, the people who support him, they do love him. The problem is I don't like it when campaigns get negative in their own parties, especially when the reasons aren't very valid. I mean, at the end of the day, I look at this and I say, you're saying Gary Johnson bought all these hotel rooms. You didn't provide a receipt. You didn't provide any proof. And then you're running around. Also, when Steve Kerbel has about, he polled at one point about 10% in a lot of online polls. He had a good deal of support on Facebook. Steve just kind of saying, like, Austin, I think you can offer a lot, but man, you need to calm this down because this is not helping the Libertarian Party. Because, at the end of the day, 6 months ago, everybody loved Gary Johnson, everybody loved John McAfee, and, everybody loved Austin Peterson. But right now, it's just split out. Some people, like I go on these libertarian groups, and people are saying, "Oh, Gary's not libertarian enough." Then some people are saying John McAfee's a murderer. Then people are saying Austin Peterson's an asshole, and it's just a stupid fight. And I'm just looking at it like, Austin, I am going to treat you like how you treat everyone else in this article, and I don't want to be rude. Now, if I was chairman, I would pledge never to support any candidate in the primary process. I would have no bias there. I would set up a couple of key criteria points, though. I think one issue the Libertarian Party has had this time around is we have too many of these small little debates where we invite candidates who can't even break 2% in any poll. Nobody is supporting them, and yet they've been to 5 debates. I would set up some standards on that. But, yeah,
right.
Darrell Terry, Mark Feldman, Gary Johnson, John McAfee, Austin Peterson, they all deserve to be in the debates. They all deserve an equal shot. And I think the Libertarian Party, as an institution, has given it to them. So I wouldn't take it away.
And so how do you, just generally speaking, libertarians tend to have a lot of infighting because it's very intellectually diverse. You basically range from the I'm here because Rand Paul dropped out of the Republicans, that kind of wing, all the way down to the full anarchists. How do you prevent infighting from bringing the party down, particularly relative to the mainstream people? Because a Republican or a Democrat, an independent, whatever, a mainstream voter is not going to end up benefiting from this infighting in the Libertarian Party. How do you fight that issue?
I think when it comes to infighting, first off, I think we constantly talk about the non-aggression principle, which I've taken the pledge. I think that while it needs to be better stated, it is a good pledge for the most part. But what I think with the infighting, though, is we don't talk about having a code of conduct among those who have been elected to the LP. I see state chairs who post very immature stuff. I see people who have conspiracy theorist blogs, but at the same time, they're saying proud chairman of this region of the Libertarian Party. So I think the code of conduct, and this is something that I don't think we can do at this convention. I think it might take a year to really get to understand this, but that's something I think would help the infighting, because a lot of the people just seem embarrassed that some members of the Libertarian Party are more eccentric. For example, I went to one event in New York, which one of the sponsor groups was the New York State Libertarian Party. They spent 1 hour talking about how 9/11 was an inside job, and I was very disappointed with that. I disagreed with that strongly, and I have no idea why a political party is even advocating that. So to hear that, and that's the kind of stuff that causes the infighting. So I think a better code of conduct in the party is needed. Now, how to solve these little issues? I think the best way to do it is we actually have growth. When people don't have growth and there's no growth in a political party and there's nothing to do, they just make up petty fights with each other because that's how they gain things. When the parties actually are witnessing growth and they have significant motion, there's a more pleasant vibe, and that does help things. So, I'm not going to deal with the infighting. I don't really want to get involved in a lot of these hassles because they just happen organically. Sometimes it's best to ignore it or say, if this continues, you're kicked out. But I think that doing things, like I've said, to grow the party, get more fundraising, that'll make people a lot happier. And also on another front, just having a basic code of conduct. Could you imagine with the Republicans or the Democrats if a state chair were to do a fragment of the stuff some of the state chairs in our parties do? It is insane. I mean, I knew a guy, I will not say his name, but he was one of the chairmen of the Pennsylvania Libertarian Party. He didn't live in the state of Pennsylvania. He was using his mother's house's address. And the guy is currently a chairman in New York. He's a chairman of one of the boroughs of New York City. And the guy has this awful record where he's been accused of blatant pedophilia, and he has a blog talking about legalizing bestiality. And somehow we give him a borough with over 1 million citizens in it, saying, "Oh, you're the chairman there," and he's been there for 5 years.
Interesting.
That is the problem. That is the problem. It's insane.
Maybe there should be
I can't believe what's going on.
So it should be a little more selective, and
here's the thing. I look at some of these some of these regional chairs, and it feels like they just put these people in place without ever vetting their resumes. They never looked at their CVs. They never looked at anything, and they just said, "Oh yeah, we have no one else willing to do it, so we'll pick you." I would rather have nobody than some of these people.
Interesting. Charles, let me ask you it this way. Let's imagine you were running the Libertarian Party, because that's what you want. What you're kind of out there saying. You would like to be.
That's what the website says.
The National Libertarian Party Chairman, of course. Oh, tell us, where is the website before I go down this path? Go ahead.
CharlesPeralo.com.
Say it again.
At CharlesPeralo.com, spelled the same way as my name. Teralo.
Excellent. Now, if you were running the party, let's fast forward. I like to say the future's already happened. We just haven't caught up to it yet. So let's just imagine the future catches up to you and you're running the Libertarian Party. Let's say I, as a radio host, and Ford as a journalist, and say we wanted to do a libertarian debate here at the New American Media. I've already interviewed Gary Johnson, Buddy Roemer, Austin Peterson, John McAfee. What would it take to actually do a really good show/interview? How would you put something like that together? How would you present the Libertarian Party, and what kind of format of sticking to the issues that matter? How would you set that up?
Well, first off, regarding me being the chairman, I would be chairman from 2016 to 2018.
Okay.
So my primary focus is state and local elections and getting those set up and making sure the state and local candidates get into those debates. So the 2020 election really wouldn't be that much of my focus. But to your actual question on how to set up high-quality debates, it is a tough one. I mean, right now I've heard of a debate Penn Jillette is trying to set up, apparently. There was the John Stoffel debate. What I would say is this, though, and I've moderated one of the Libertarian Party debates myself. I think we've had too many of debates. I don't know why every state convention seems to have their own little debate of a very poor quality, where we invite these candidates who have no shot of coming close to this. They don't even represent the libertarian principles, and we put them next to John McAfee, Austin Peterson, Mark Feldman, and Gary Johnson. I have no idea why that has been acceptable for so many years, and I think we should try and change that. But the next thing I think we should do is we should set up a quality standard in the LP. So we say we will not promote a debate on social media unless we're guaranteed a certain standard. The first debate they did in Mississippi, I had many friends of mine who were from the Rand Paul camp, and they were excited to vote Libertarian this election. They saw that debate, and they just said, this is not good enough. So I think the big issue is we have too many debates. We do not have nearly enough quality. So that's, I'd say, the goal. Now, for you set up a debate, or any media set up a debate, I think it has to happen a little bit organically. I think my focus is more on building the infrastructure. I don't think it's so much organizing debates.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you're very right on the fact that the debate thing is completely worn out. That's fine. I think there are different, more like, what if everybody sat around a bonfire with their favorite beverage and talked? But you had 5 minutes to just like a different way to connect with people. It's so staged, it's so rehearsed, it's so phony, the whole debate thing, and the stuff that wins is usually just the most bombastic, outlandish stuff. This party has the potential to really become. I talk to most people around me, and most people aren't hardcore left or right. They're totally willing to join a libertarian party because they kind of just want to be left alone. Like, to sum up libertarians, we kind of just want to leave people alone, and we want to be left alone. That's something that I think the most of the country can get down with, but then we get pulled off onto these side paths when we have to go to war, and we have to create enemies, and we're divided by race and by politics and by socioeconomic status. It's just relentless. So moving forward through this election and toward this 2016-2020 cycle, what types of things can happen that can encourage more public interactions in a way that showcases and highlights the most important core beliefs of the Libertarian Party as opposed to being pulled off on too many sidetracks?
Well, I would say the biggest thing we can do is what I said with the Republican and Democrats, trying to build a Libertarian Party affiliate program. I think that would be a major help, because a lot of Republicans I speak to, they are only members because they want to vote in the Republican primary. The same goes for the Democrats. If you still say you can be active in the Libertarian Party, but hey, you don't have to give up this primary vote, and we still get them to donate to us, I think we could double or triple our numbers almost overnight, because we would have something. We could go to the CPAC convention, we could go to all the Tea Party rallies, and we could say become a Libertarian Party affiliate, make that our new marketing tool, and they will do it. I mean, if we were to do that at CPAC 2015 with with thousands of Rand Paul people who were there, we would have gotten more support. So I think that's one big feature we could do. The next thing to build the infrastructure, it really comes in what I said on social media, trying to build a network of single-issue pages that do promote the party. Because if you look at it, I would say the pages Occupy Democrats, U.S. Uncut, Being Liberal, those very liberal pages are kind of the things that paved the way for Bernie Sanders with the youth crowd. If you really think about it, those pages all have millions of likes, and they get those millions of followers, and they reach, I believe, like 30 million people a week, and they all promote leftist content that built that paved the road for who the Bernie Sanders people were. We should focus on that from 2017. We should make 2017 our year to get a dozen pages, each of them breaking 300,000, some of them making 1 million, and we use that to reach 50 million people a month. And that's how we grow our party. That's how we get benefits there. So that I'd say is my whole idea for building infrastructure. The other thing is we obviously need to talk about money. So I would say we should set up a program where, sort of what McDonald's does with its franchisees, every year we try and get as many regional or local chairs into one room. We do a 1-week training seminar, and we try and court some big donors to come along. They see that things are progressing. So it helps the party, and also, hey, maybe it gets Peter Thiel to give us $1 billion. Maybe it gets Tim Draper to throw us a bone. We do stuff like that.
Interesting. Ford, you had a couple other questions, too.
So I had a question on raising funds, which is that another accusation of mainstream parties is that the various candidates are funded by the corporations and things like that. How do you avoid that perception if you're getting the money? And so put another way, would you accept Coke money if it came your way? Lot of money could definitely get you.
The Libertarian Party already did accept Coke money. He was our VP.
I'm sorry?
The Libertarian Party already did accept Coke money. He was our VP nominee in 1980.
Well, so in 1980 he was the VP nominee. But I guess I'm talking about right now as people consider. And by the way, I was an intern
if
for
I was
Charles
the chairman of the party, I would want to do a meeting with the Koch brothers. I would want to bring in the best and brightest people in the Libertarian Party, and I would want to go to Tim Draper. I'd want to go to Peter Thiel. I'd want to go to John Paul DeJoria, and I would say this is how. I'd want to go to Mark Cuban, and I would say this is how we're going to build the Libertarian Party. This is why we need your financial support. And I would also say, if you look at Hillary Clinton, you look at Donald Trump, those people are broken. So here's the thing. We do not have to change our principles to get corporate money. If you look at the Republicans and Democrats, if you look at the origin of how these people get involved in the parties, most of them had the same principles going into it as they came out with. Even Barack Obama. The thing is, a lot of their views of supporting big government, it just lends itself to corporations anyway. So it gives a couple of special privileges. With us, we're saying laissez-faire capitalism, we're saying social freedom. That doesn't really lend itself to corporatism. So I would say to big corporations and high-earned donors, I would say, we're not going to help you out. We're not going to give you tax breaks. But at the end of the day, we're going to build an economy where everybody is on a better set stone. And if you look at Peter Thiel, the Koch brothers, I think they're very passionate about doing that. I think they're very they're very big philanthropists, and I think that can help us out quite a bit. Now, regarding actually getting money, Bernie able to raise over $100 million online. Ted Cruz has raised $60. Ron Paul raised $33 million online. We could do that. We could really do that. And that's kind of why I'm saying the social media front show a movement is happening. So, we could. The fact is, the Libertarian Party right now, we struggle to raise $2 million a year. Some years we don't raise over $1 million. I think that is a pretty sad reality. We need to really confront that.
Huh. And so that's sort of on the financial front, and then, so I'm sort of circling back into the social issues. One of the interesting things, you mentioned history with the Kochs, for example. A lot of the things pushing the Democrat Party forward, for example, the Bernie people, is the notion of social progress, whereas the Libertarian Party has been essentially ahead of all of that stuff since ever. Upon the Libertarian Party's founding, you had gay marriage as part of the platform. How do you sell people on that topic? How do you get contributions from the Democrats, basically, when the perception right now is that they're, totally extreme, and often the perception is that libertarians are some kind of alternative right wing?
Well, I would just make it clear that we have always been the party of gay marriage. We've always been the party of marijuana legalization. The thing is, the Democrats are becoming more socially liberal, and that is a problem for us. What I would really try and focus on is how we are a very, very pro-immigration group of people, because at the end of the day, I don't think you can have capitalism unless you're pro-immigration. And I would point out that Hillary Clinton and other people, they are just not pro-immigration. They are not pro-amnesty. They are the people, like we talk about Donald Trump building the wall. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton in the 90s, they incarcerated millions of immigrants. Ronald Reagan was the big amnesty president. I would say we go to the Republicans and we say we're going to be like Ronald Reagan on immigration. We're going to have the biggest amnesty. And when they start going crazy, we show the craziness and we show it to the Democrats and say, hey, the Democrats have always opposed amnesty. We're really about that. So I think that that's a great way to get Democrats on social issues. Regarding the war on drugs, abortion, gay marriage, I think the Democrats, they caught up. We might have missed the boat there. 20 years ago, I think we flipped, but sadly, I would say luckily. Sadly for the Libertarian Party, luckily for America, the Democrats on social issues, they did get a lot better. So I think we missed the boat
Charles,
in many of those cases.
Let me ask you about the open borders, because I've been a promoter in my life. And the number one rule is you got to have your perimeter, and you have to check the IDs on the way through, whether that's a nightclub,
Exactly.
whether that's at a music venue. In the age of terrorism, you can't go on a plane without it. We can debate the TSA another time. I know that's a different story. But I am definitely not for open borders, but I consider myself ridiculously libertarian in many, 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 many ways. Explain how open borders, without having any control of who's jumping into our personal space, how is that a good thing for my liberty and freedom?
I want to note this is something where I agree to disagree with Brian generally, but Charles, go ahead.
Well, when it comes to open borders, first off, I think when you say that term, it is a blanket term. When I say open borders, I really mean capitalist immigration. So what I mean by that is we go back to a pre-1924 immigration policy where we only shut down the border in the event, really, of a plague problem, a disease issue. So think swine flu or Ebola. That's the only time we would really shut down immigration. Now, I look at it and say, this is what my ideal immigration system is. Number one, no immigrants could ever receive welfare benefits. But for people coming into this country, I would say the process is they get their bag searched, they get their fingers printed, they get a photo ID, they get a social security number. And then afterwards, we also require them, and this might sound a little bit liberal, but we require them to get a very basic health care coverage, which, really to do a very simple orthopedic-driven health insurance, it could be as low as $50 a month. We require that, and that makes it so all the costs really go away, and immigrants become a benefit to the American budget. So I think that that's really what I view regarding borders security. Now, if you're the world, I look at it and say, although Hispanics do vote with the left right now, it is largely over immigration. But if you actually go to Hispanics and look at where they vote on ballot measures that go to the states, they vote very conservative. So I'm excited with the idea of Hispanics becoming more to the right as the years go on, and I think it's going to happen. But I would say that open borders are a good idea in that front. I don't think we should have totally open borders. I think that could be dangerous, especially right now. But there is compromise. Not all issues have to be one way or another. We can do a lot of compromise on these types of things.
So basically, you were kind of saying that you're for people coming in and getting fingerprinted and just a basic hello. Am I?
Yes, and that's as simple as that. And I think that's the stance a lot of libertarians, such as Ayn Rand, Milton Friedman, they all had it. I mean, nobody wants a system where we don't check. And also, this is what will keep us safer as a people, because we have hundreds of thousands of immigrants come in every year. They come in and out, and we can't check those borders. It is impossible to secure those borders. But if 99%, I would say of the illegal immigrants, 99% of them are good people. We can now focus on the 1%. We could be just like Bernie Sanders, focus on the 1% of the ones coming across the border illegally who are very clearly bad people, and we counter them. So I think that's just a safety issue. Now, I think with immigration and the Libertarian Party, we're the only party that has consistently over the years said to people, we're going to give illegal immigrants respect. And I feel that with this Donald Trump mentality, you have a bunch of people in states where there's borderline no immigrant population cited immigrants as the biggest problem in their lives for no apparent reason. And I think it is race-based. And I think, I find it pretty disgusting what's going on, to be honest with you. I mean, we have no problem putting an illegal immigrant in a Mays uniform or a McDonald's uniform. But when they want to buy a property, form a bank account, buy insurance, we tell them, no, you can't do that. We're going to arrest you. And I think it's really just disgusting how it's going on. And I think the Libertarian Party should be the immigrant party.
And so I wanted to go further on security. So immigration is one of those things. I had read one piece, this was from way back, that basically said Rand Paul's campaign was over the second that a member of ISIS beheaded an American. Basically saying that libertarianism, as far as foreign policy is concerned, is a lot easier to sell when we're not really scared of anybody. But as it turns out, America is scared all the time of somebody. How do you fight the conception that libertarians aren't strong on military and that we're not going to be safe from ISIS?
Well, first off, I would say the reason why Rand Paul's campaign ended was because Rand Paul couldn't organize a campaign to save his life. I mean, if you really look at how that campaign was, run, they focused on very old school methods, phone banking. They focused on things nobody cared about, and I was embarrassed because I was a fan of Rand Paul. I didn't like how he did the debates. I would go full hours into debates and kind of forget Rand was even there because he didn't even try to speak. So I would say that's why Rand lost. But on foreign policy, I would say our anti-war message is a consistently winning message. And also, Donald Trump, as sad as it is for me to say it, Donald Trump is the more anti-war candidate in this race so far. And he is way ahead. So
you're very right about that. People, and of course, people are saying Trump hasn't been specific enough to pin him down on anything. And Hillary, I mean, she's as slimy.
He's definitely not specific enough. But on foreign policy, although he clearly has no idea what he's doing, when he does say stuff, it is kind of libertarian. It is kind of anti-war.
Well, I wouldn't characterize it as libertarian though, because
no, kind of
stuff,
libertarian.
For example, tariffs and everything like that. It's essentially build a wall and then not engage in anything outside. I don't characterize it as not.
Well, hold on. I'm missing both of you.
Wait. Sorry.
All right, somebody, go ahead. Ford, wrap that piece up.
No. I heard the word tariffs. No, with Donald Trump, when it comes to his views on tariffs or those types of things, he is does talk about how the Iraq War was a waste. So, you know what? It's better than George W. Bush. It is better than Barack Obama. And I think that it does show that you can make anti-war statements and be good here. And the other thing is, when it comes to ISIS, I think the Libertarian Party should just very well say that there are 4 letters in ISIS. In 4 hours, the United States military will probably spend more money than ISIS will spend an entire year on defense. I mean, ISIS uses aged equipment that we left from the Iraq War years ago. They don't have that much money coming in, especially with the lower prices of oil. And I think we could essentially turn ISIS into dirt within 24 hours if given the opportunity. I don't think ISIS is a very real threat to us. I think ISIS is a problem. I think we should focus on things in the airlines to prevent the 9/11 type situations. But I don't think ISIS is a serious threat. So I think we have to here's the thing. In 2014, all we did was talk about ISIS because the Republicans wanted to win the Senate. They won the Senate and they did nothing. Why? Because they know ISIS is not that serious of a threat.
Well, and if you go a little further in that, if you see some of the investigative reporting that Ben Swann has done, the origins of ISIS and how there's proxy wars going on all over in northern Africa that are sucking in Russia, and you got China, and you got Iran, and everybody's playing these little side door games and funding these other groups, and that's like the big knock on the neocons. It's like, guys, look, you're playing Risk with people's literal lives, and you're screwing a lot of this stuff up, and I'm sick of it. That's what I feel is kind of coming. And to follow up on what you said earlier, you know, it's not that Trump is that libertarian per se, but he's better. That kind of speaks, on the other hand, at just how bad Hillary Clinton would be as a continuation of foreign policy. I mean, she is what you're seeing now in northern Africa and the Middle East. She is... however many years she was Secretary of State, that's her fingerprint if anybody else's.
Well, it's actually very strange because for the first time, I think ever, I think that the Democrat is going to be better on economics than the Republican, and the Republican is going to be better on foreign policy. Like Donald Trump. It's sad because Hillary Clinton, when it comes to economic views, Hillary Clinton really doesn't want to do anything. I mean, she's not really talked about raising taxes. She's not talked about any new spending programs. She's not talked about tariffs. Donald Trump talks about increasing the budget 40% with new sensitive infrastructure programs. He can't name one program he would cut. And then also Donald Trump really looks around and he has no clue what he's talking about. And then he says, well, I'm going to put a 30% tariff on China. Now, I'm an inventor. I need to use China to sell products globally, which does employ Americans. If you were to put a 30% tariff, the economy in America, China, Europe, South America, it would collapse. The Dow would go down over 50%. America's economy would collapse with Donald Trump's trade views.
All right, Ford, you were going to chime in there.
No, I mean, I think that all of those points are valid, but then the question is, how do you actually sell it to the public? I think there's a huge deficit between essentially the reality of foreign policy issues and the perception of them, largely driven by the mainstream media outlets blowing everything out of proportion. So how do you actually restore reality to the general public's perception of these issues?
Well, I think that when it comes to restore liberties, if I were chairman, it's tough to say really what you can do, because as chairman, my goal is to run a party and build infrastructure. I think it's the goal of candidates to really spread things out. But what I think I would do is I would focus on trying to get more stable media online, and we try and spread good content out with that. Because let's look at something like the Fight for 15 with the $15 minimum wage. It is the most ridiculous idea possible. And a year ago, the majority of Americans, I think they would have agreed a $15 minimum wage is stupid. Now, I mean, it's still ridiculous, but a lot of people think it's a good idea because of what happened with social media and how things spread virally. So I think that we could spread a lot of good content, like why free trade is good, why immigration is good, why being anti-war is good, do it online and get a lot of benefits there. And we can eventually take it to mainstream media and mainstream politics.
know, Jerry Brown, the governor of out here in California, he recently came out. And, yeah, Jerry Brown, good old Jerry Brown, flower power peace man.
Jerry Brown. I love that song.
He said that it didn't make financial sense, but it made good political sense. He said, to paraphrase, he said it almost that absurdly and bluntly that yes, I know it's not good economically, but it just feels right. It just seems better. Literally from our governor. Yeah. So you're right how people get lost in these issues sometimes.
Well, you know what? I would actually blatantly rip something off from Steve Horwitz. Steve Horwitz is an economist in upstate New York. You guys might have read his work. He's a really brilliant economist and really great in the liberty community. He had a profile picture on Facebook, which I think should become a viral thing for the Libertarian Party, where he just holds up a sign saying, I'm a libertarian because I want to help the poor, and I don't care how good your intentions are. I just felt that was perfect, and that hit the money on how I've always felt. I feel like when I talk about issues such as the Davis-Bacon Act, or I talk about trade, I talk about it because I want to help people, regular people. And, you know, people always say you don't care about the poor. They don't talk about the economics. They don't talk about the ideas. They just talk about it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. It makes me upset. It's very sad, but that's what we have to confront with. So I would say that the Libertarian Party message, I mean, one thing we should do is we should just outright say we are here to help the poor. And if you look at the Libertarian Party's marketing, you get a very little sense that we're trying to explicitly say we want to counter poverty, which we do want to do. I'm not accusing the Libertarian Party of not wanting to do that. They clearly do, but we don't show it well enough. And I think that should be a goal.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a vacuum there.
Similarly, do you think that you can actually sell privatized? I'm looking at your platform on your website. Privatization of Medicare and Social Security. I assume that you're in favor of essentially abolishing Obamacare, if you could. Although I haven't seen that yet on your website.
I think that was just a student looking at my platform.
Support people's health care.
Well, I think with health care, first off, when it comes to Medicare and Social Security, I've actually brought up a proposal which I think the Libertarian Party should look more at, which is sort of a plan that actually in some ways expands Medicare but also contracts it. So what we do is we basically we would raise the age of receiving 100% entitlements to, let's say, 72 or 73. We do that, but at the same time, we give partial benefits that start at the age of 55. So that could be 10%. And over a course of that 20-year cycle, those benefits go from 10% to 20% to 50% to 75% to 100%. And then also every year you raise the acceptance age another 60 days or so. If you were to do that, first off, on the first year, you would cut Medicare about 4 or 5%. But over time, you would probably save 30 to 50%. And I think if you were to propose that platform where age is affected and things do get slinked out, a lot of people would adopt it. A lot of people would be very happy with it. And I think that that's a good model. Now, with privatization, that is the end goal, but that doesn't have to be the pure-term solution. And I also, when it comes to the budget, I think the LP should probably focus more on the Department of Education, the FDA, the Department of Commerce, places where we just have a bunch of paper pushers. We should focus on the Department of Defense and cut military spending by over 50%. I don't think we have to go right away and say, oh, let's knock out Social Security and Medicare. I think we should focus on making them more effective and saving money. But, you know, at the end of the day, if we would abolish Social Security, people would just use private saving accounts anyway, and it really wouldn't save consumers that much money.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not really sure exactly where the next step is and how people are going to take another leap in political awareness.
I think the next step is actually what I proposed with scaling the program, because I think that does stabilize the growth and it makes it so that, because I see Medicare as an issue where we're talking right now with it consuming 3.5, 4% of GDP. We look at the year 2025 and we see that 1% of GDP. I think that needs to be stopped, and we need to ideally get it to a point where it consumes 2%
there's also little things like the penny plan. You see these little tiny incremental ways at addressing the problem. And who knows what is going to be the right answer, but when people literally don't even know how to fill out their IRS forms, and they stack them up, and it's taller than human beings, and the system is way too complicated to encourage spontaneity and creativeness and that industrial, it's the spark, it's that creative force that kind of created this country. It's all being stifled by so many layers of nonsense. It all needs to be simplified, in my opinion.
Well, I think when it comes to tax structure, it's one of those issues where I felt Bernie Sanders was actually good with his marketing. He said in his plan, he had an ad that all it said was "make college free." Now, I disagree with that entirely, but it was a good ad because it was straight to the point. I think the LP should probably have an ad saying simplify taxes, less taxes, simple things that get to the point. They kind of explain themselves, and that's all we need. I don't think we really do that, and I think that's one of our market issues. And I think if you go to these state conventions, you find a lot of things where people want to talk about philosophy. You see people put in Murray Rothbard or Ayn Rand or other people that 99% of people have no idea who they are. And you have that happen. And I think that's why the growth isn't working out for us so well.
Go ahead, Ford.
My next question was actually going to be regarding, again, so we're talking about these mainstream parties. There's a mentality, I think, among many people, and I've heard it, I sympathize with it as well, that to get the libertarian message itself, so the little L libertarian message out, you should try to reform both of the mainstream parties, make the Democrats more fiscally conservative, make the Republicans more just libertarian in general, but specifically that the Republicans are the potential target for that. What would be your argument to somebody, for example, who wants to run for, let's say somebody wants to run for Senate, somebody along the lines of like a Rand Paul, who probably agrees with the libertarians more but thinks he's more feasible as a Republican. What is your argument to somebody that the Libertarian Party is the place with potential rather than the Republican Party, that it's better to vote Libertarian than to try to change the Republicans from the inside, so to speak?
Well, first off, I would say for a candidate like Rand Paul, who I think on 90% of issues I agree with, I would sadly say that if you're going to run, if you want to win, run as a Republican, and I don't think it really affected Rand Paul. Here's the thing, I don't want to pitch the libertarians, and I don't want to pitch people and say, oh, run for this position and you might win, because that's flat out lying. What I would say is that we actually have to grow the party and grow registration. I don't think we could really pitch serious candidates who have a shot at winning and say you're going to win with the LP. There was only one instance in the last 50 years where I think that happened, and that was Lisa Murkowski, who is a very, very small L libertarian, very, very small, microscopic. She wanted the LP nomination after she lost her primary to Joe Miller, and the LP declined her, which I don't know if I would have supported. I'm not sure. I have to look at Murkowski. I'd have to have spoken to her. But I see the issue really as, we can get these people, but we need to actually prove the LP is worth it. We need to prove that we can break 10% of the vote and we can do things. We're not really doing that now. When the LP, when the Libertarian Party, especially the National Party, we don't offer any money to the state parties. We don't offer any money to Senate or gubernatorial candidates. Why would someone join us at this pace? We need to actually provide real infrastructure so the Peter Schiffs, the Rand Pauls, the Gary Johnsons, they want to run on our party, and they don't right now. And honestly, I look at some of these state parties, I look at the National Party, and here's the thing: 15 years from now, if I were a successful inventor, I wanted to run for Senate of New York, I would honestly be a little conflicted to join the GOP because there I could win. It would sadden me because I'd have to deal with a lot of Republicans, but the LP has not offered that much. So I say, with me as chairman, I'm trying to actually build the LP so people who are of higher profile can join in, and they could actually think they have a serious chance at winning. But until we do that, until we build up the local parties, until
what's that quote? Be the change that you wish to see in the world. You know, it takes a vision to do stuff, and if you're seeing that there's a path forward that hasn't been addressed, I mean, that's what a lot of us have done. I've done that in my career, and that's what a lot of people who are speaking out and following politics closely right now, that's what we have in common. We're people that are willing to jump in the ring instead of being the spectator. You know, it's like when they ask for volunteers, who goes and runs out in the middle of the football field. You know, okay, all right, we're volunteering for what? You know, most people just stay back and watch, but that's the beauty of this country. With all the oppression and all of the tyranny and all of the bad stuff going on, we can ultimately become the people who create the world that we want it to be. And, you know, that's essentially what you're going for with the Libertarian Party, Charles, is to kind of reform it in a way and take over the reins and say, look, I have a direction, I have a game plan, here's the structure of it, we can color in the colors, but here's the outline. Here's the outline of what's going to take us to that next step. You know, because we're in a situation right now, Charles, a recent poll today, 24% in Rasmussen reports. 24% would just opt out of a Clinton and Trump race. To me, when I see a report like that, let's just imagine 24% is an accurate number, and I've seen it much higher in some places. If 24% would just opt out because they don't like either of them, Libertarian Party should have 24%. I would set that as the minimum benchmark in this election. But once again, is the structure or the systems or the procedures in place to actually mobilize and keep a coherent message? I don't know the answer to that. But
no, the answer is no, they're not. Honestly, here's the thing: if it is Gary Johnson, Austin Peterson, or John McAfee, they are the nominee. If one of those three are the nominee, and it is Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, if they do not break 10%, then it is 100% the fault of the Libertarian National Party, because any one of those three candidates are good enough to go against those two terrible, terrible candidates. So I blame the National Party. I just don't think we have enough set up, and we're not really doing anything. I think that just needs to be reformed right away. But to the point, though, would I really say to someone like Rand Paul, run as a Libertarian? You know what? I would love to see them run as the LP candidates, but I am not going to lie to them and say that it's the path to victory, because that's just not true.
But you think it can get there? Let's focus on the positive. We think that could happen. It could be organized.
I think we could. I think at the end of the day, the Republican Party is in many ways collapsing. It seems like there's a lot of young people who do not want to deal with them. There's a lot of older people who have just gotten sick of the Donald Trump types. And I think with the Democrats, they've realized there's just too much corruption. It's Debbie Weiser, Schultz, and Hillary Clinton. I don't think a lot of those people want to be libertarians, but we can cross some of them over. So I think we could get there. And here's the thing. If it means we get to 10% of the vote, the way I look at it is that first they ignore you, then they make fun of you, then they attack you, then you win. We've been at this party for 41 years, and they still ignore us. I would love it so if Donald Trump were to try and make a joke about Gary Johnson. They say, oh, the guy with the bicycle who gets high all the time. I would love if Donald Trump were to make that joke, because that shows we're starting to matter. That shows that we're making them afraid of us, and they don't. It just doesn't happen. They don't even recognize our existence. They totally ignored Gary in 2012. Why? Because Gary had no infrastructure. Now, if you go back to 2000, Al Gore actually made a lot of statements about Ralph Nader. If you go to 92 and 96, Bob Dole, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, they all attacked Ross Perot. They don't attack us. They don't laugh at us. That's our big issue.
I will say that Raven Simone yesterday on The View mentioned the Libertarian Party and Gary Johnson actually by name, which I thought was impressive.
I saw that, and I was very disappointed that they just were like, who is this Gary Johnson guy? I wish they could have said Governor Gary Johnson. That would have been a lot.
But good for her.
I heard Gary Dave mention 6 times. You could mention he was a governor, guys. Because I think the average woman or man watching that was just like, oh, Gary Johnson, just some schmo out of the middle of the country who wants to legalize everything. I think it would have been nice if they said Governor Gary Johnson. Oh, like if they would say, oh, he was the governor for 8 years in New Mexico. He did a great job there, and he was socially liberal, fiscally conservative. I would have really loved that, but instead they kind of just made it seem like, oh, Joe Smith and Gary Johnson out there. But I was happy to see Raven-Symoné did mention it.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a good point.
So I had one other question that sort of goes with my last one, but is essentially the opposite end of it. So you're looking to get more people to actually run, have the structure to actually have people in various races. What do you do about these races where you have only like one candidate running for a position and they don't necessarily represent the the Libertarian value? So, for example, it has been alleged by some that you and I actually spoke on a comment thread on a post by Augustus Invictus. I interviewed him a while back, and he tends to say that he's a libertarian and has most libertarian beliefs. However, his party chairman actually resigned because he had previously written a paper on eugenics and sort of flirts with fascist, nationalistic type ideals. What do you do about someone running under your ticket who is not necessarily representative of your ideals? And I'm not necessarily saying that Invictus represents that, but as an example,
from getting to know Augustus a bit better, I think a lot of those niggas were very trumped up. And also, you have to realize Augustus is very young. He's 32 years old. So, if we're going to judge everybody by something they might have said at age 22, then, everybody who runs for any office should be disqualified. But
sure.
I look at it and say that there's a couple of measures. The first thing is I just have to say, as the party chair, I don't have the ability to box people out. Now, what I think we could do, and this goes back to what I said about fundraising and social media, I think we do have to set up a quality standard where we observe a candidate not just by the issues, but by what they're doing and like how they behave. We say we're not going to promote you unless you meet a certain criteria here. So that's one phase of it. Try to incentivize the local parties to. But the next thing, and I think it's as important, is the NRA plan. All of these organizations, they ask people stand on a certain issue or all the issues, and they rank them. The Libertarian Party, I think what we should do is we should rank every member of Congress, we should rank every governor, we should rank every senator on a scale of 1 through 100 and see their score. And then we should ask every candidate to fill in and take a quiz of sorts or a test or whatever you want to call it, sort of an I-Would quiz, and then just say, where do you rank? And I think that the way we have to look at it is we have to see which congressional districts have people scoring 30%, which ones where the congressmen, such as Mark Sanford or Rand Paul, they get 90%. And then I think we have to really stay our focus and make sure we're not nominating people who are worse than the people already in office. So I think having a serious score metric, that's something that could help us along the way. And I think that's a good idea. And that's the kind of idea where you could outsource it to a third-party player, and it would cost really nothing, because all you have to do is just take analytics, take voter records that are public, and then just do a score. And it would be a simple app to do. It would really be free. And it could solve a lot of that confusion.
All right. Well, then let me kind of wrap it up here, Charles. I want to thank you for jumping into the program. It's been fun. We Ford and I do these shows from time to time, and then we veer off. I twist in on the West Coast, and he twists over there in D.C. And we're trying to encourage more intelligent conversations with interesting people. And if there are,
I hope I could hold that standard fairly well.
Yeah, it's what did I say earlier? I said it was nuanced and pragmatic, and I think a lot of what you had to say, a lot of it was, if you want to achieve, you have to organize. It has to be a well-oiled machine, whatever it is. And I have the personal belief that people kind of just want to live their life and be left alone, and they'd prefer not to get murdered in the process, and they'd like to do some fun things that made them smile and laugh in between. I think almost all of humanity somewhere in that spectrum, when you peel out the sociopaths that that usually find their way up to government levels, which is really why the Constitution exists the way that it does, in my opinion. It really, it's restraints on what government can't do to us. It's such an essential core to the human experience.
I just had a big photo of Donald Trump pop up in my mind. I think the words sociopath and Trump have kind of just leaped together a little bit too closely.
You know, I wrote an article a couple of days ago for the New American Media, and I was essentially talking about how Ted Cruz yesterday naming his running mate. Yeah, like that's great, but you're really far behind here in the process. It might have been a good idea a few months ago. And right toward the end here, I wanted to read this because this actually runs in when you brought up the sociopath. It reminded me. George Carlin once said, "When you're born, you get a ticket to the freak show. When you're born in America, you get a front row seat." Oh, by the way, I'm discussing Cleveland sports, and I'm discussing Cleveland and the RNC. You know, it's really it is a front row seat in the freak show. So I say, when you root for Cleveland sports, you get a front row seat to watch your teams repeatedly snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Wouldn't that be exactly what would happen to Trump if he finds a way to blow this lead? What better place than here? What better time than now? They said in Rage Against the Machine's Guerrilla Radio. In the season of Trump, we have officially watched reality TV morph into politics. The key to ratings lie in outrageous and erratic behavior that either makes us laugh or makes us cringe. What better place than Cleveland to potentially watch a train wreck from the front row seat? You know, that's what we're looking at. It is reality TV. It is extreme narcissism, I would add, from Clinton and Trump. But really, the sociopaths kind of rule the day, and they find their way to positions of power to make sure that they're enriched and they live awesome lives, and anyone that threatens them, they're eliminated. You know, I mean, it really is a gang mentality, if you want to break it down. And this system was supposed to be set up as the ultimate check and balance against creeps messing with us. And I think with Edward Snowden's revelations and all the stuff we've learned over the past decade or two with our foreign entanglements, I really think the time has come for humanity to flip the script on what's been happening. So I'm going to kind of give you the outro here, Charles. Thank you again for joining us on Agree to Disagree at the New American Media. But any thoughts you want to leave us with as we kind of wind this down would be fantastic.
Well, I would say that, well, an obvious thing to say is for anyone who's listening who will be a delegate, please support me for the chair run. That's an obvious thing to say. But, you know, I would overall like to say that this election, it has been a very confusing one. I think a lot of people have been bitter on politics. But, you know, I think there is some good that can come from that bitterness. And I think the good thing is saying the two parties have crashed and burned effectively. The Republican Party has put up a total joke, and the Democrats have put on a relic of the 90s that nobody even cared for in the 90s. So I'd say that, you know what, you can't give up, and this is the key time. This is the best time ever to be a libertarian. It's the best time ever to be a member of a third party. So let's make the most of it, and that's why I'm running for chairman.
And you can find more information at Charles Peralo. That's Charles, Peralo.com. Ford Fischer, I'll let you kind of wrap it up on your side as well.
Sure. So again, my name's Ford Fischer. I'm the managing editor of news2share.com. That's news, the number 2, share.com. On Twitter, I'm at Ford Fischer, Fischer. I'm also on Facebook, Ford Fischer, which is the easiest way to find me. And
your final thoughts on this whole libertarian thing and your outro elevator pitch. Wrap it up for us.
I think that we're in a very interesting time in politics. I think that when you look at the two mainstream candidates, I think libertarians have a lot to be afraid of and upset about. There's not much redeeming about either of those candidates from a libertarian standpoint, but because they're so negatively viewed by the sort of entire country, I think that this is the year where it's sort of, I don't want to say now or never, but I think this is probably one of the most important elections for libertarians. And so whether or not Charles gets the position, I think that the position is probably a really important one, and I think the Libertarian Party is going to have a real voice in the next year.
And I'll probably wrap it up on this point. It's a phrase that's often misattributed. It doesn't matter where it came from. It's the thought that counts. The quote is, "May you live in interesting times." It's both a curse that you put on somebody, and it's also a prayer for hopes and dreams and wishes for success. May you live in interesting times. I just often wonder, you know, am I trolling as hard as Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Paine would be doing right now? If they had access to everybody on the globe, am I doing what they would be doing? You know, and I kind of try to keep ratcheting up my game just a little bit as I try to live my life on one hand and then do these other things on the other hand. And there's a lot of competing interests, but, you know, what's the line from Plato? Indifference to public affairs is a sanction to being ruled by inferior men. And I strongly adhere to and believe in that quote. If we're going to sit by and just say, well, it's not my problem, I don't need to get involved, I don't want to spend the time, it's frustrating. If I want to sit on the sidelines, all that means is that other people are going to become in charge of my life, and I don't accept that. I don't accept that this human experience was intended for us to be asking for permission and forgiveness every step of the way. I think it is, you know, walk around, do your thing, just cause no harm to somebody else, you know, and if it's got to get tricky after that, just don't cause harm to somebody else. That's such a basic human component. It's the golden rule. It's 1,000 things since time immemorial. It's just act in a way that you'd be cool with if your neighbors were doing to you. And when you start and end with that, I really think the Libertarian Party is just about the only option that we have at this point. You know, at least the only option we have at this point to work with the Democrats and the Republicans or change that 50-50 blend without any other option there. You know, we become the change that we want to see in the world. We start... you know, I'm infinitely hopeful for the direction that we're headed, but, you know, there might be some bumps along the way, and all I'm saying is I applaud your efforts, Charles, to get involved and do some stuff. Same with you, Ford, and all we can do is the best we can with each day and try to push something forward. You know, either stand on the sidelines or get on the field, and I like people that get out on the field, win, lose, or draw. So, Charles, thank you so much for joining us. The website, again, is Charles Peralo, Charles Peralo. Go ahead and check that out. Charles is running for the National Libertarian Party Chairman position. All right, to be continued, good sir. I appreciate your first appearance on the program. I hope you had a good time, and I intend to do this again soon.
I did, and I look forward to talking to you guys some more later.
All right, man. Thanks so much. You have a great evening. And for everybody, Ford, you as well, brother. Good times.
All right, I'll see you.
We'll do this again soon. And for everybody else out there in the TNAM radio network, I just want to say that I do appreciate you. I do love you. And we were celebrating our 5th anniversary. You know, this has been a labor of love from the beginning. It's been just, hey, what can I do today? Sure, I don't have the time, I don't have the budget, I don't have the staff, I don't have XYZ, but you know what? I'm not going to let that stop me. 5 years. There's got to be something you can say for the commitment and the dedication to put 5 years in. It's a fun birthday we're celebrating. Send us wood. According to Hallmark, that's what you send on the 5th anniversary. Send us something made of wood. Anyhow. Thank you, Ford Fischer. Thank you, Charles Peralo. Continue seeking truth, challenging dogma, and having fun. We encourage you to check out our mostly civil conversation at thenewamericanmedia.com. We'll talk again soon. Take care.
Hi, everybody. You're listening to Agree to Disagree with Brian Engelman, and this is John B. Wells reminding you that not only is Brian Engelman a cool guy, and not only is the newamericanmedia.com a very cool platform, but here's a cool idea for you, too. Are you alone? Not really. Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? You do. Of course you do. Everybody does. One or the other, maybe even both. You know, there are a lot of dogs and cats that are at shelters right now, and if somebody doesn't take them home, they're going to wind up euthanized. That's a nice way of saying they're going to be killed, because there's simply not enough room. I guarantee it, the best dogs and the best cats, the best pets, come from shelters. There's something about dogs and cats. They know. They know where they are. You walk through one of them, and certainly at least one is going to look at you and go, I wish you'd take me home. I'm in hell. Please take me out of here. It'll be the best thing that you ever did for your soul. You'll feel good about it. And not only that, but you have a friend for life. Doesn't matter if you got money, you don't have money. Well, it doesn't make any difference to a dog or cat. All they need is the sound of your voice and maybe even the stroke of your hand, and they're fine. Maybe a little food every once in a while. The sweetest sound that those pets ever hear is your voice. Think it over and adopt a cat or a dog from a local shelter today. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did.